Hey team, I'm just going to go through my shooting process now. Before I go into it, I'd like to acknowledge I know there's a few accomplished shooters in our group, which is cool, and their process is probably a little bit different. At the end of the day, it comes down to whatever suits that individual. I've worked on my process to suit my style of hunting, and certainly it's not a one size that fits all. So hopefully you get one or two ideas or tips out of it. You might get nothing out of it, which is fine. But yeah, I'll go through my process. It works for me, and yeah, we'll see what happens. I've just got one of my rifles out, guys. On all my rifles I have a cheek pad and bipod. With the cheek pad, it's just a bit of foam underneath there. With that bit of foam sits directly under my cheekbone, so it gives me quick, consistent access to my sweet spot. If I didn't have the cheek pad there, sometimes if you're looking down the scope, you sometimes go sideways, backward and forward trying to find that sweet spot. With the cheek pad, it gives me quick access to that point. On all my rifles I have the bipod with the pod spikes, and that enables me to load my bipod, and that's all part of my recoil management, which I'll go into more detail later on. I also use a rear shooting rest on the majority of my shooting, so I'll just show you a couple. This one here you've probably seen at the range. It's quite common. This is just a rain cover pack that I used to use when I first started hunting, just as a rear bag. Now I'm using the old buddy bag. That gives me consistency when I'm shooting, fine tunes my accuracy. It's probably just a little bit heavier than the rain cover, which isn't too bad, and I don't mind carrying the extra weight if it's going to improve my shooting. So yeah, so I always try and use that anyway. So I ground zero all my rifles. Sometimes you'll find that the bench zero is slightly different to a ground zero, and it's probably not going to matter if you're shooting up to 300 yards, but when you're shooting 600-700 yards, every little detail counts. So it's about fine tuning everything at 100 yards to make it more beneficial at the end of the scale at 700 yards. So that's the reasoning for that. Moving along, I'm just going to go into the body position now. Obviously we do most of our shooting in the prone position, and we're in perfect conditions where the lawn's nice and flat. It's not always like that when you're hunting. You'll probably find in the majority of our hunting we've probably been in there 3 or 4 times looking for a suitable shooting position. So we'll be looking into clearings and slips, and then we'll look for a flat point that we can shoot from. If we don't find a flat point, we'll look for a little hill that we can mount the gun on, and then get the body positioning behind that. So I'll just move into the body position, the ideal position, and then I'll elaborate on to if it's not an ideal shooting position. So with the body position, I like to lie behind the rifle facing the same way as the target. It's a more relaxed state for me. So I'll put the stock into my sweet spot on the shoulder, looking above the target, and then drop down to load that bipod. So my body weight is now loading the bipod without me pushing into it. Sometimes you'll find you don't have a nice flat point to shoot from, so I'll try and find a little hill or something to put the rifle on, which gives it the elevation, and then I'll use my feet, I'll change my feet position, and then push up with my feet or toes, dig it into the ground, which allows me to hold that pressure on the bipod, allows me to load it. It's all part of my recoil management, and I've actually got edited a couple of clips that I'll show you the different positioning on that. Cool. So with that stock onto my sweet spot on my shoulder, with these 3 fingers down here, these 2 fingers are separate. So I'm pulling that stock into my shoulder. Whilst loading the bipod, what that allows is when I do the recoil, because you're going to get recoil from the shot, it's pulling the stock into my sweet spot. So I'm telling the recoil where to go, pulling it back into that sweet spot, and then with the body weight loading the bipod, it'll move back into that shooting position, allowing me to have my follow through and see if all the shot or whether the target's been hit. So I've just gone over those 3 fingers, pulling the stock into that sweet spot on my shoulder for recoil management. Just going to touch on the trigger fingers. When I'm squeezing the trigger, I squeeze those 2 together. I've got a lightened trigger which enables me to just squeeze. I've seen some guys have a finger right in there, and what happens is when you're pulling the trigger, sometimes the rifle might move to the right slightly because you're sort of pulling. Probably doesn't matter over 100 to 200 yards, but when you're shooting 5, 6, it's critical that you get everything right. and it's about putting the odds in your favor. So everything you're doing at 100 yards counts at 500-600 yards, 700 yards. So yeah, so these 3 fingers pulling into the shoulder, these 2 fingers relaxed. When I see an animal, I'll have the finger on the trigger. If the shot is not presented, I'll release, and when it's back on again, I'll put the fingers back on again. While I'm doing this, I'm controlling my breathing, and then when I squeeze, I'm always squeezing on the out breath. So we breathe in, breathe out, and then squeeze. Part of the breathing gives me consistency when I'm shooting. You'll probably find sometimes when you're breathing, you breathe in, the rifle moves, and you breathe out, the rifle moves again. So it's on that dull spot of no breathing, that's when I squeeze. Another discipline is shooting with 2 eyes, which was really hard for me because my left eye is my dominant eye, and she always wants to take over. So it's taken me a while to master that principle. Okay, so when you're shooting through, I usually close my left eye because it's the dominant one, and then reopen it once I'm on the target, and then maintaining 2 eyes through the scope. Sometimes it might be a couple of minutes before I take the shot, so if you're naturally doing 2 eyes, it feels more natural. If you've got one, sometimes you get eye fatigue, or you start squinting and you start doing this sort of stuff, which is not relaxed. This way enables me to hold more control for longer, and then also helps with my recoil management. When I'm looking through, the gun's going to come straight back into the shoulder, move straight back into that position, and if I'm maintaining visual through my scope, I can see whether the animal's been hit or missed, or hopefully the holdover for the follow-up shot, which I'll show you in a clip as well. So 2 eyes open when you're shooting. This enables you to be more relaxed. When you're hunting, sometimes you don't have a nice prone position to shoot from, and you'll see in a couple of our videos we shoot off branches, so I'll just go through that process with you and see if you're getting any tips out of that. So what I've got here is my walking stick, and that helps me shoot off branches. So I'll just demonstrate, or just pretend this chair is a branch. So what I do is I put my bipod down over a branch, which gives me a little bit more leverage and control. With the walking stick, I've got it with my stockers, and then with my left hand I grab onto the walking stick and the back of the stock, and that enables me to hold my elevation so it's not going like this all the time, and then lean it into the shoulder as much as I can, and then hold my position, and then with these 3 fingers pulling into the shoulder and squeezing off. What you'll find is when you're doing this, the recoil management goes out the window, and I'll show that in a video. Just going to do a quick overview, guys. So obviously with the rifle, I've got the rear shooting bag to control elevation at this end, the cheek pad for my eye consistency through the scope, the bipod with the spikes enabling me to load it for recoil management. I've got the walking stick, which helps me shoot off branches, and just on that, like I wouldn't shoot 600 yards off a branch, I'd be quite comfortable shooting off a branch up to 400 yards. When you start getting further than that, it gets a little bit more complicated, and you want that improved accuracy and consistency. Moving along, we've got the body position behind the rifle, looking straight in. I've seen some guys lie sideways and looking like that down there. It doesn't look comfortable, and I suppose when you're sort of watching a target, you get uncomfortable after a while. So nice and relaxed body position, flush with the rifle, looking through to the target. Got 2 eyes looking through the scope, so I can hold on the target for longer, and it's more relaxed and natural, obviously. And then my breathing, so I'm controlling my breathing in and out, and then when I squeeze off, it's on that dull breath, so breathe out then squeeze. These 3 fingers are pulling the stock into that sweet spot on the shoulder, enabling the rifle to go, because you're going to get their recoil anyway, so it's telling the rifle to come back into that sweet spot, and then with your body position loading the bipod, move straight back into the follow-up shot. The 2 fingers for the trigger fingers, squeezing those when I'm ready to squeeze, and yeah, obviously the follow through. So if you've got 2 eyes following through, you can watch the fullest shot. If you hit the target, seeing where it rolled, or hopefully have a second shot, and then it gives you the holdover.